When I bought my ranch, I thought I had finally found the perfect escape from the noise of the city, a place where the air was clean, the stars shone without interruption, and the water of my private lake reflected the sky like a mirror. 2,500 acres of land stretched around me like a kingdom, each acre holding the sweat of my labor, the dreams I had invested, and the peace I longed for after years of grinding work and business. The Homeowners Association, or HOA as everyone called them, was supposed to be nothing more than a small committee that managed petty neighborhood issues like trash schedules and fence colors. Yet over time they had grown arrogant, acting like they were kings of the entire community. They fined people for leaving garden hoses out, demanded approval for the type of grass people planted, and even told me once that my barn door was too rustic for their liking. I ignored their nonsense most of the time, believing they could never truly touch what mattered most to me, my ranch and my lake. But I was wrong. One crisp morning, as I walked down the trail toward the water, I noticed surveyor flags stuck into the earth, neon orange markers slicing across my fields like wounds. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe utility workers had strayed onto my property, but then I saw bulldozers parked near the tree line and men in hard hats studying blueprints as though my land belonged to them. Rage and confusion boiled inside me as I demanded answers. And that's when the ugly truth spilled out. The HOA had signed a contract with a construction company, granting them development rights to the 2,500 acres surrounding my lake. My jaw dropped. How could they sell what wasn't theirs to begin with? I rushed to their next meeting, storming into the room where they sat smugly with their clipboards and coffee cups, acting like royalty. When I confronted them, they brushed me off with condescending smiles, saying it was for the good of the community, that shopping centers, luxury condos, and golf courses would raise property values, and that I shouldn't stand in the way of progress. My hands clenched into fists as I listened to them speak, as if my sacrifice, my hard-earned sanctuary, was just a chess piece in their greedy little game. I had spent years building my ranch, working sunrise to sunset, restoring the land, protecting the wildlife, and nurturing the lake that had become the heart of my property. And now these people who couldn't even mow their own lawns without complaining, were trying to strip it all away with a pen stroke. Neighbors whispered that the HOA had received under-the-table incentives from the construction company, bribes dressed up as administrative fees, and suddenly their eagerness made sense. They had betrayed me, betrayed the land, and betrayed the community by selling something they never owned, all while hoping I would be too slow, too distracted, or too powerless to stop them. Standing there in that meeting, with their smug faces staring back at me, I felt the weight of injustice burning in my chest, but instead of exploding in rage, I made myself a silent promise. They thought they had me cornered, but they were about to learn that I was not a man to be cheated out of what was rightfully mine. The moment I walked out of that smug HOA meeting, I knew that fighting them head-on with anger would only give them what they wanted, an excuse to label me unstable or unreasonable. So instead, I chose patience, silence, and strategy, because if there was one thing years of running businesses had taught me, it was that paper trails don't lie. That night, I sat at my desk with stacks of files, land deeds, and property maps spread out before me like a battlefield, and as the hours passed under the dim glow of my lamp, I uncovered the truth. The HOA had not only overstepped their authority, they had outright broken the law by forging agreements that exceeded the scope of their charter. They never had the right to touch my 2,500 acres, and every signature they placed on that contract was nothing more than a fraud disguised as community interest. My heart pounded as I realized I had them in checkmate, but I wasn't about to stop there. With the help of my lawyer, an old friend who relished a good fight, I gathered every piece of evidence, every email, every shady note in their meeting minutes, and compiled a case so airtight even the construction company would see the deal was worthless. A week later, I walked into the glass tower where their executives worked, carrying a folder thick with proof, and when I laid it on their polished conference table, I watched their confident smiles vanish one by one. They flipped through the documents, their voices lowering as they realized they had been tricked by the HOA into buying land rights that didn't exist. "This entire contract is void," my lawyer said with a calm but sharp tone. And if you try to push forward, we'll bury you in lawsuits before you even lay a brick. The room went dead silent before the lead executive finally admitted defeat, ordering construction crews to halt and pulling their men off my land within hours. By the next morning, the bulldozers were gone. The surveyor flags ripped out of the soil, and my lake ranch stood untouched, reclaimed by the truth I had fought to defend. But the victory didn't end there. Word spread through the community about the HOA's betrayal, and soon neighbors who once blindly followed them were demanding accountability. State officials opened an investigation, and the same board members who had tried to bully me with fines and arrogant speeches were suddenly facing lawsuits, fines of their own, and public humiliation. Some even resigned under pressure, their empire of pettiness collapsing like a house of cards. I didn't just take back my land, I shattered the illusion of their power. Standing at the edge of my lake days later, the sun reflecting across the water, I felt a peace that no amount of HOA intimidation could ever touch again. My ranch was mine, my sanctuary restored, and the people who tried to rob me of it had been taught a lesson they would never forget. When you gamble with something that doesn't belong to you, you don't just lose the game, you lose everything. And as for me, I had proven that wealth, power, and progress mean nothing without respect for ownership, for truth, and for the quiet strength of someone who refuses to be cheated.